Guys, welcome to Pinkerton's Barbecue in San Antonio. We're coming live today to talk about a whole bunch of things about how to be better at making our own barbecue. But we're also going to do a little talk about data protection and the evolution on backups. So as we go through this today, we're going to have a lot of changing speakers, a lot of changing topics. With all that content, we got to move pretty quick. So in our most recent webinar, we did this exact same feel, but in Galveston. We talked a whole lot around the changes coming from the Homeland Security, the TSA, who that's really impacting. Today, similar message, I guess, same push towards the same direction, just a different chapter within that security talk. So just a quick reminder, we've been preaching this for a while. Every company, no matter their maturity, no matter their size, needs to have confidence in four things: a clean copy of data, a proactive threat hunter, visibility into the security gaps of their company, and then four, an incident response plan. Those first three are preventative maintenance measures. So we can do those things and try to limit the attack that comes upon us. So when we get into data protection today, that evolution we're going through is really centered around that topic. So I got a lot of speakers I mentioned. Grant Pinkerton, owner and founder of Pinkerton's Barbecue. He'll be on in just a second. I've got Steve Connors from Cohesity, who's one of many of our partners in our newly revamped service offering Center offers for data protection as a service, and Chris Pace, CEO and founder of Center Technologies. So we're going to start with Chris. Chris, we do a lot of marketing events. Some say too many. But we haven't done one on backups in a long time. Why is it relevant again? Why are we doing this?
Backups have really evolved. I mean, backups have changed. So, you look in the past, backups were all about how do I get my files back, or how do I, in a catastrophic event, a lot of those events were a server crash. I've got hard drive failures. I've got corrupted data. So it really was, how do I get my data back? But it was it was something that, backups were never fun. They weren't fun. They were very complicated to manage. And, from a support standpoint, there was a lot of challenges with managing backups. And today, where it's changed and where it's greatly changed is cybersecurity and the bad actors that are out there. So if you look at the past and you looked at the incident response plan that James is talking about, that is a once in 10-year event that would particularly happen to businesses. So they tested it. They could get by with backups not successful on an everyday basis. Today, it's changed because these bad actors are out there. They're wreaking havoc in customers' environments, and they're encrypting all the data and really taking down their complete network. And when they're taking it down, your last measure to be able to get something back up and running is through the backups. So they become more and more important. And really, what's really important, and again, going back in the past, was you could have failures that would happen and you could get by because you didn't need them as often. Now today, with the bad actors coming in, you can't have failures anymore. So you really have to manage backups differently. You have to manage it, don't respond when you get a failure, respond when you don't get a successful backup. That's how critical they are to businesses.
And we've seen a bit of a digital transformation too, a new reliance on not in-house servers, but cloud-based SaaS applications, right?
Yeah, I mean, digital transformation. Businesses are going through digital transformation on an everyday basis. They're taking technology, they're applying it to their business, and they're trying to make their business better. So that's, streamlining their processes to where they're, easier. And they're utilizing these technology tools like Microsoft Office, right? Office 365, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive. They're putting their identity management when it comes to Active Directory in the cloud. And so, they're utilizing things like Salesforce. So it's critical that not only are you backing up your data and your files that you're using, your Excel documents, but you also have to back up all this effort and all this time that you put in to streamline your business from a digital transformation standpoint. So there's more and more tools that are coming out.
Yeah.
And, it's James, you talk about that we haven't done a backup of event in a while, and why is it relevant? Backups are more relevant today than they have ever been. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things that, I started off by saying is that it's the last measure that you have to be able to get something up and running.
Yeah, that's perfect. And as that continues to change and evolve, the products do too. That's why we're here today, actually, is to talk about how Center's got a revamped and a newly launched service offering that kind of combines the process, the people, the technology all into one. One of those technologies is called Keep It. They're one of our sponsors today. They're big on the SaaS backups. Anything you save into Microsoft, Salesforce, a handful of others, is backed up in a buffet style. It's pretty neat. It's 99-year retention, unlimited data per person for one low rate. It's cheaper than Cece's. I don't know how they got it to that low, but it's cheaper than Cece's Pizza buffet. So the other side of the house, though, still has to protect the server environment, has to protect those all the changes happening within a business, and be ready for any change that the business may throw its way. That partner for us is Cohesity. So Steve, they may not know Cohesity yet. Can you give a high-level overview? Who are y'all?
Yeah, sure. So, lot of great points. Cohesity is a purpose-built file system. So we're a data management platform. The conversation around backup is evolving as well. It's not can we host and protect your data, right? It's how fast can we get the business back up and running. So a lot of conversations with customers aren't around backup. It's around time to data and recoverability. And I think that's why we're a great strategic partner for the offering that Center's bringing. It starts with, an immutable, purpose-built file system. There's multiple layers because we're that last line of defense, but now we've got the data. What are we going to do to protect it? So from a immutability perspective, the ability to not delete anything, not have anything deleted, and that's whether it's a bad actor on the outside of the organization or it's someone inside. They're let go, they go scorched earth. What are we going to do to protect the data from that perspective? And that's a feature we call legal hold or legal lock. So now we protect it time-based, where no one in the organization can delete it as well.
Well, that's a buzzword right now, the immutable backup, right?
Yep.
I know the market space that Center plays in is typically that mid-market and SMB space. When I think about the business owners that we often talk with, they say, I've already got a backup, and that's offsite. But an old-fashioned synthetic backup may not be the enough anymore. We may need something stronger. And is that what you're referring to on the mutability, leveraging, let's say, snapshots? Is that world?
Yeah, it starts with immutability, but it also starts with a zero trust approach of how we access the data. So multi-factor authentication. How are we going to restrict access to the data?
Yeah.
Once we talk about someone having internal access to the data, we use immutable backups to make sure not even an internal bad actor has the ability. From a FIPS or a security standpoint, how do we manage it from a compliance and best practice?
Sure.
And then how do we make it easily recoverable? So that's when we get into instant mass restore and quick recovery of those assets.
That may be one of the nicest things in some modern technology of backups today is the speed to restore and the ease of testing.
Yep.
Testing might be the most forgotten thing in the market space that we play in.
Yep.
Backups have always been set and forget, but now we have the ability to test. So Chris, I'm going to ask you to speak one more time if you don't mind. Center's always had this passion of bringing enterprise-grade tech and tools, enterprise-grade processes to the SMB and mid-market space. This feels like this is a perfect fit then for our continued evolution of Center. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're big on, making sure that we're bringing enterprise technology to our customers. And at the end of the day, it's how do we enable our customers utilizing technology to accomplish their business goals? And for this, from a backup standpoint, how do we ensure and how do we keep them up and running? You talk about recoverability, you talk about testing. Those are things that Center is doing. Again, like I said, backups today can't be the set it and forget it. You've got to test it. You can't respond when there's a failure. You have to respond when you don't have a successful backup, because that is the last line of defense. And this is a solution that we're bringing to our customers that enables them to be able to go fast, take risks, because we're on the back end protecting them, making sure that it's successful and allowing their business to continue to run.
Yeah, couldn't said it better. That's awesome. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, so I'm going to touch a couple of housekeeping items. And during that time, we're going to have a little bit of a transition where Grant's going to come on screen for us. Don't get too excited just yet. You'll have plenty of opportunities to clap, standing ovations. We can even, that's a good honk. We can even ask questions. So let's start there. Taylor, as always, is manning a chat. So if you want to ask questions, feel free to get on there and start asking them now. I've already gotten some questions from a lot of people. There's some pretty funny things in there. If you want to ask something that's a little bit off the wall, feel free. Grant's an open book. Yeah. A Cohesity question?
Yeah.
Let's hit that while we change mics. That sounds great.
Matt Cunningham wants to know, does Cohesity have anything on the roadmap for a plugin that allows us to manage Cohesity file shares through Windows Computer Manager rather than Cohesity Dashboard?
Yes.
What a question. Repeat it for everybody.
Yep. Go. One more time. The question was, and I'm sorry, I'm talking through with my engineer that's saying it right behind. But the question was managing Cohesity through Cohesity file share through Window Manager.
Yeah.
And we already have access to that today.
Yeah,
That's all. Yeah, it's already available today.
I know, Matt. Their company has a Cohesity already. So Taylor, if you'll do me a favor and keep that on the side, I want to give Matt some more information on that later.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing, many of y'all, the thousands of you who joined, are likely here just for the Big Green Egg giveaway. I get that. We're going to do that at the end. We do have the names of everyone who's attending being written down into a bucket. And so if you're on right now, feel confident we've got you covered. Next, we also are excited about having some Meter Plus giveaways. I got 5 of them right now for the first 5 of you who say the Cohesity and Center story, the Keep It story needs to be a part of your story. So if you want to explore how to make that a part of your company, then jump on that chat, let Taylor know. And the first 5 of you that booked that meeting with us, we're going to go ahead and get you a Meter Plus. If you don't know what a Meter Plus is, trust me, you want one. We're going to talk about that here momentarily. With that, Grant, why don't you come on in, and I'm going to hand it back to you, Steve. You want to start?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's my honor to introduce Grant Pinkerton. We share for all the non-UT fans. I apologize. We share a love for UT football. That's kind of how we started the relationship. My son went through the recruiting process and the offensive line coach. At the time, Herb Hand is always, even now, if I go to a new city and I want to know where to eat, you call Herb Hand and he tells you that's the place to go. And so Herb, coach, made it a point every time he was in town to eat at Pinkerton's just north of downtown in Houston. And that evolved into the Houston team, especially during COVID, turning that into our office. I think I can bet in the last 2 years, I've probably been there more than 50% of the Fridays, at least, with us kind of located all over the city. So that's how it started. Just a quick couple highlights. Grant, graduated from UT. You started from a pop-up perspective, and then it evolved into the store, I guess, at 2014 or 2016 was
2016 is when we opened that store.
It feels like home. I mean, it was your home for a while. Can you kind of
Right.
talk about the original design of the facility? And
Well, in
how
order
you
to make it feel like home, we decided to live there for 3.5 years. No, but we, one of the things that I believe is really important in barbecue is that kind of sense of kinship and familiarity and that family environment. I always say growing up, and I'm sure everybody that's watching right now probably can think back to when they're a kid of what their idea of barbecue was. You probably had one place you went to as a child. It was a place your parents took you, and that was what barbecue was to you. What was your place?
Well, it was leather brisket and
It can
a
be
burnt,
terrible.
burnt chicken from my granddad, but it's probably for me realistically a good company.
Right.
Yeah.
And for you,
I grew up in Central Texas. We didn't have a ton of options, right?
Right.
And so that was a missing hole in my heart until I found the store. In college, I probably, if I had a favorite, it's the church. Zion Church there in Huntsville, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Was where we took, and I fought for recruits every weekend because I knew if I had a recruit, I got to eat there for free. So that was
Nice.
that was probably my first favorite.
So you were an original bag man.
Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
That's it. Which kind of leads us into, I'm going to get back to awards and a lot of the success that you had, but kind of marrying our two passions from a cooking and eating perspective. Football's given us a new opportunity to engage with sports, and NIL
Right.
is changing the way that you're approaching how you invest. Could you kind of talk about that and what you've done with the team in town and the team a little bit further up the road in Austin?
So right now we have about 14 athletes that we have on NIL deals. You know, it's a really cool opportunity to support kids that previously couldn't really be supported through anything beyond just, you know, their academic institution. Two, it's a great way to get involved in the community. You know, one of the guys we have here in San Antonio, Rashad Wisdom, his family, they're out at Converse Judson, or Judson family, local San Antonio.
Nice.
You know, for me, coming from Houston, it's not necessarily easy to make inroads into a community.
Right.
But, you know, this allows me to go out and get essentially community spokesperson that, you know, can rep the Pinkerton's brand and do that kind of stuff.
Will you repeat that? Pinkerton's is currently in sponsorship of 14 athletes?
Yes.
Goodness gracious, Grant.
So, you know, we do
Wild.
some at UT, and
You were just on the Michael Berry show.
we were Michael
Yeah,
Berry,
you were-
ABC 13.
You were talking about, in that case, it was about Dijon Robinson. right?
Bijan Robinson, yes,
excuse me.
running back.
Baylor grad, my bad.
Yeah, that's all right. You'll know who he is in 2 weeks. We did a deal with him, and really one of the cool things about that was he knew who we were.
Nice.
And on that first day that NIL broke, I sent him a message, hey, what do you think about partnering up with us? And he was like, dude, that would be awesome, you know. So that was really neat. The first tweet that I even did about that got over 1 million impressions on Twitter.
Wow.
Which is really cool because that's from my organic account. This isn't him tweeting it. That is me just saying I signed him. Twitter estimates an impression at about $2. So, you know, that one tweet is like, you know, equates to like a couple million in advertising. So one out of every 60 people on Twitter saw our Twitter and tweet that day.
That's really cool.
That's amazing. So to competition, right? And a fun story I didn't share with James prior to, I'm on a flight from Vegas back to Houston. I asked the gentleman sitting next to me in that exit row what he does for a living. He goes, I'm a pig man. I sell pork products to barbecue joints. And it turns out he's a vendor of Grants. And he went through the process, especially as the way you guys approach competition, that they go through hundreds of racks of ribs for this example, and they produce a competition case.
Right.
It's about 15. Is it 15? Is it a dozen to a case? 15 to a
I
case?
think there's 8 racks in each case.
Okay, so they go through that to hand select and down select all the best racks of ribs to go to competition. And I told Grant, I'm like, hey, I met a guy that I think's pretty important to you, provides all the product. And he goes, yeah, I buy 15 of those, and then I pick 3 from the 15 best
Really?
boxes that they
Yeah,
send
so
us.
it's something like 110 racks. We'll get 110 of their premium picked racks in, and then I'll lay all 110 out on a table and go through and handpick 3 out of those 110, and then I just discard the other ones into y'all's bellies.
There you go.
So that you're speaking of competition cooking at that
Yeah,
point, different than
yeah.
the restaurant.
Yeah, it is different. So, you know, one of the things that makes competition barbecue so fun, and you know, the barbecue purists out there will go, oh, but really, it is really fun to be able to play with flavors and the intensity of flavors and the balance of flavors. And so that's what kind of competition allows me to kind of get my creative juices flowing from a cooking standpoint. So it's a lot of, like, the ribs are similar to what we do at the restaurant, except they're much more intense. Like they're only supposed to be one bite eaten out of it, you know? So,
Right.
I mean, like, you sit there and you will want to eat a plate of them, but you will regret eating a plate of them.
Sure.
You know, they're extremely rich.
Is that where this came from?
Yeah, so this right here, this is our Grand Champion beef rub. So I'm a 2-time world beef Grand Champion. We went to Memphis and competed in Memphis and May World Championship Barbecue Cook-Off and won it. I'm the reigning champ, and that is a great pride for me to say, because it was very nice to go into, you know, another part of the country and essentially lock down the beef world title and keep it here in the state.
Well, there's probably a shameless plug, but why don't we go ahead and get everybody kind of excited with the idea that if you're listening today, you're receiving a bottle of this cool hat.
Yep.
And then one of these sauce bottles. I think
Probably the
one of
original.
likely the original.
I mean, you can't go wrong with any of them.
So that's gonna be a fun pack for them to receive. But you're saying this is different than the seasoning that a purist might.
Well,
go
we
with.
have a salt and pepper blend, which is what we use on our brisket on the far side. But that Grand Champion beef rub is just about the best rub for steaks, burgers, beef ribs. I'll put it on meatloaf.
Wow.
I mean, honestly, it's very versatile. Venison, all sorts of wild game, any kind of deep red meat. That's gonna be my go-to rub. It's really great. It has an awesome umami kind of component and a heavy pepper flavor to it. It's kind of like your traditional salt, pepper, and garlic on steroids.
Wow. It doesn't have steroids.
What could?
Okay. Well, I'll share that with the kid later. First pitmaster named Forbes 30 under 30.
Yep.
Tons of accolades and awards across cooking competitions. What's the most memorable?
Honestly, I would say, I think, they've all been memorable in their own right. I do think that our first trip to Memphis and winning there was huge because it was out of the realm of what we would consider our normal like comfort zone of barbecue.
Sure.
We left the state, we drove 10 hours, set up. They're all people from way different regions, not many Texans competing there. And we were sent by, the team we went to cook with, we had one mission, and they brought us in to cook their beef. And I went, and that was all I did. I cooked the beef, I turned it in, and, just being able to go up on stage with guys like Myron Mixon, Tuffy Stone,
Right.
Mo Cason, I mean, all those guys you see on TV, it was really kind of vindicating for me to go out on the competition circuit and be able to excel at the highest level. Kind of like what we want to do at the restaurant is, do restaurant barbecue at the highest level too.
I wonder if that's the next step. Are you going to start doing the TV thing?
I would love
Displace
that.
Tuffy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New champion in town.
There you go.
From a store perspective, I don't know how much time we have left. Obviously,
You're
I'm a regular in
Right.
Houston. It's hard to explain to my kid what the norm effect is because he never grew up watching Cheers.
Right.
But that's the feel I get when I walk in and everybody knows your name, right? This is my first time here to the San Antonio store. It's unbelievably beautiful. So if anybody hasn't been, or you need a good road trip, this is where you need to go. How'd you choose San Antonio over some of the other markets that you could have come into? And can you kind of talk about how this place came to be and where we're located right now?
Well, this is a very unique and cool opportunity that we had here, and these guys that sold a company that were local San Antonio guys that made some good money and really wanted to reinvest in downtown San Antonio. So they kind of started an urban redevelopment project over here on this side of downtown. And one of the things that they did was purchase this old park space and build Frost Bank their new headquarters. This particular piece of property that we built our restaurant on had some deed restrictions. But one of the things that they could do here was put a restaurant on it. Well, one of the guys was a big barbecue fan, and he said he was looking around for, hey, who's best barbecue, young guy up and coming, in Texas barbecue, and somebody sent him my way, and he came and they ate and they loved it, and he came up to me and said, hey man, I got this really unique opportunity at the block off the Riverwalk. It's an acre-and-a-half park. Build a restaurant in there and kind of build a showcase craft barbecue space in the middle of downtown San Antonio because they don't really have anything in downtown San Antonio. And he said, look, we have hundreds of thousands of people coming here with conventions, travel, all that kind of stuff, and they're leaving, and the only thing they're eating is county line on the Riverwalk. Like, we want them to have the real Texas barbecue experience here. Is that something you'd be interested in doing? I said, man, that is exactly what I wanted to do in Houston, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to do it in San Antonio too. Like, my mission with opening in Houston was I didn't want people coming to Texas leaving saying, oh yeah, I had barbecue in Texas and it was okay. Like, I don't know if I can say this, but that's bullshit, It's supposed to be the best.
Yeah.
Cut it. Drop it. We gotta drop it. No,
Right.
it's fine. You can say whatever you want.
Good.
So
Dump
so
them-
you
dump the
decided
audio.
during COVID you're going to open a new store and try to get married a couple times as far as it had to keep getting pushed down the
Yes.
road?
I don't try to make anything in my life easy, but we make sure we do it well when we do it. So yeah, we opened this place and we were building it out all through COVID, which was kind of interesting, from a restaurant standpoint. But it is one of those things where I'm just kind of a do it live kind of guy, and I believed in the product we had, and our sales during COVID were very strong still. Thanks to guys like you, and you and the community helping us out. But it also was a sign that, people appreciated our product and wanted to make sure it would stay around too. So when we saw that response from the community, I had a lot better feeling. And then, we were kind of heading into the spring, and we opened this during the freeze week here in February. And that's kind of when everything opened up. I kind of hit the timing actually just right. February, March, spring break was great here, and we're kind of off and running. So, it ended up working out all right, and I ended up getting married, and that's pretty good too.
No, that's awesome.
Segue.
Well, I shared with Grant. I had a meeting with my manager probably 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, and he was reading. I'm like, hey, could you hurry up and approve my expense report? I'm like, it's been sitting out there for a while, and so he opens it up while we're live on the phone. It's like, holy Pinkertons, what have you been doing? I'm like, I'm renting space over just north of downtown. So we definitely we love the barbecue. Obviously, we love the people, the family that you guys have created. It's special, right?
Well, we appreciate that.
Awesome. So, Grant, I'm going to change the line of questioning a bit. I want to start talking about what do backyard pit masters that pride themselves on their craft need to start maybe tweaking or fine-tuning their practice with based on what you've learned. So you just said something that kind of caught me off guard, how different the competition cook is than the restaurant cook.
Right.
So if you were speaking to someone new on barbecue and they were getting started in their backyard, would you align them more with that practice of a competition cook or more the restaurant cook?
Let's go restaurant style.
You think so?
It's much more straightforward, and there's not nearly as many variables. So, that's one of the things that I try to tell people that are starting out in their backyard is, let's say you put your first brisket on there and it doesn't turn out the way you want. Like, people have this tendency to change everything. They change the wood, they change the seasoning, they change how hot they're cooking it. Like, okay, then it turns out bad again. It's like, well, the best way to do it is figure out what you want, what you want your kind of target recipe to be, and go in there and then change one variable at a time.
Fine tune it.
Exactly. So even if it doesn't turn out at all like you wanted, first thing, just change the heat, okay? Then change the wood, then change the rub, then change the sauce, or, change whether you're wrapping in foil or butcher paper. But, really, that is one big piece of advice I give people is, it's hard, right? Because for like a backyard cook, it's a 24-hour process to cook your brisket. Right. Like, I get it. It sucks. You cook one, you spend all this time, you get your family all hyped up for it, and then your wife's like, all right, looks like we're ordering pizza, and you're really disappointed. But
this isn't a story that I've ever told you, but I'm willing to share my horror story. We had people in from out of town, out of state. I had that same feeling you had. They can't leave Texas thinking that barbecue's not good.
Right.
The briskets were not bad, but they were not good.
Right.
And I sliced it, I tasted it, I sliced another spot, tasted it. Like, this isn't even, it's like vinegar or something. Like, what happened here? And I dumped 2 full briskets in the trash. And they all got so mad. These people from Minnesota ran up and pinched it out of the trash can.
Yeah.
And they're like, this is fine. Like, no.
No,
Don't touch
it's fine
it.
in Minnesota,
Get
but
away.
it's not fine here.
Get away from it. So I know what you're talking about. So one of the first things I started analyzing was what kind of meat am I using?
Yep.
Not beef versus chicken or pork, but how do you pick a brisket the right way? And maybe if you have tips on pork too, great. But I know the brisket selection is a stressor to most.
Yeah. So one of the things that I like, when I'm looking for a brisket, and this is probably counterintuitive to some say, is I actually like a larger brisket. For guys who aren't very good at trimming, I'd probably say go for something smaller. But, if you think about making an ice sculpture, you start with a big ice cube, right? You're not going to want to start with one where you just got to chip away. So I like to start with a nice big brisket, and I can just work my way down into kind of the heart of the brisket, leaving only the best spots, and it kind of gives me more wiggle room. And if I need to take off more on one side, it gives you more room for air, and you get a nice thicker flat, and you usually tend to have more marbling in the point side too.
So you're using some good terms there. There's a good chance everyone on knows those 2 terms. Maybe they don't.
Right.
The brisket's 2 muscles, right?
Right.
So explain that real quick.
So and your brisket, you got your fatty end and you got your lean end. The lean end is going to be the flat, and the fatty end is going to be your point. I usually just end up calling it the fatty end and the lean end because that's what people seem to be able to remember the best.
Yeah.
But the two muscles lay over each other like that, and it's really important in trimming and cutting to get those trimmed up and done correctly.
So in a minute, this is kind of a newer thought actually on brisket, is that you really do have to trim it down to a nice aerodynamic set, right? So in a minute, guys, we are going to pull a raw brisket out, and Grant's going to teach us quickly how to trim a brisket down to a usable form. So I'll come back to that topic in a minute. If you have questions on that, we'll touch on those. Let's get into barbecue pits for a minute.
Okay.
My most common question I get from my friends, usually it's their wives. What barbecue pit should I get my husband for birthday, Christmas?
The most expensive one.
Is that what you say?
Yeah.
I do the other way around. Find the cheapest $2.99 pit you can find, and when they love it and they still like it after that, then invest something big.
Right.
But there's a lot of options. There's the ceramic, there's the stick burner.
Right.
You guys went in Houston with close barbecue pits, and then changed to
Mill scales.
Mill Scale, which is a newer company, right? Talk a bit about what your preference is in a pit. Why is that important? I know you have a rotisserie here too.
Right.
What's the difference to you?
Well, I love these mill scale pits, and I really like, the way they cook, the temperature at which they run. But in the end of the day, it's a offset stick burner just like the ones that you send. Different design, but same principle, right? The ceramic is good for guys that are backyard cookers. I've never personally cooked on one, but they're not cheap either. But they're good because it gives you some leeway on your heat retention. They do a lot of the hard work for you, keeping your temperature where you want.
Prior to pellet smokers and all the computers and stuff, that was the cheat, was the ceramic pit.
Yeah, exactly. So now, you got pellet smokers. One pit that I cook on, and that's all I cook on for competition, are called ugly drum smokers. And it is a 50-gallon metal trash can, essentially, that has a charcoal basket in the bottom and a rack. I mean, it's similar kind of to the philosophy of a ceramic, but they're meant to cook very hot and fast. They're super efficient, and it almost has a pressure cooker effect.
Okay. That's called an ugly drum.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That was my high school nickname.
Cool.
So.
Yeah. But anyway, those are great, and the cool part about those is you can run it with a water pan or without one, and they drip. Their drippings will drip straight onto the coals, so you get this added element of flavor that you can't really get on an offset or. It's actually has a very old school flavor to it.
So it sounds like any way you go, as long as you master the pit, how to keep the temperature steady.
Right.
Maybe airflow.
Airflow
be the
is
most
key.
Important thing next.
So there's several options. On a offset, I leave both of my ends wide open. We're gonna regulate the temperature with the fire. We're gonna want airflow at maximum all the time. So. The stack completely open. I'll even leave the doors open to the fireboxes on the pits I have here.
That's a huge component because the backyard smoker is going to want to go inside, even take a nap, or maybe eat some dinner, run a quick errand. You can't do that because you are constantly having to feed a small fire.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So if that's the case, the backyard smoker may not be able to produce a restaurant quality stick burner. They would fill the firebox.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to fill it up with wood. And tamp it down, and that's why you get that creosote, over smoked kind of brisket that a lot of guys get. Plus, I use this analogy a lot with guys that are cooking brisket, especially, but really any barbecue. You need to think of your brisket or your pork steak or your butt like a sponge. You take that sponge, and at the beginning of the cook, you dip it in water, okay, and you put it on the grill. So. Every time you get a temperature fluctuation, let's say it gets hot, well, when it starts getting hot, the meat starts opening up, and then when it starts cooling off, it starts to condense again. Well, if you got a sponge and you're constantly wringing that sponge out, by the time it's done, it's dry, Yeah. And the same thing happens with brisket. So I get people all the time and say, oh, I cook at 225. I said, you can cook at 300 as long as you keep it at 300. Steady. Just keep it steady wherever. So I tell people, wherever your pit wants to cook that day is where you need to cook. Here we cook at 275, 300 degrees. In Houston, we cook at 230. Really? So and they taste exactly the same, but it's where that pit wants to cook. I have cooked on all different pits. and every pit will have a natural place where it kind of wants to settle in.
Mhm.
And that has to do with the way the pit is designed, but also your atmospheric pressure that day, your barometric pressure, the temperature outside, wind direction, all those kind of things are going to go into where that pit wants to sit.
What barbecue pit do you have at the house?
I have like 8 of them. So,
Ugly drum.
yep, I have 3 ugly drums. I have an offset. I have a PK grill.
Mhm.
I have an Old Hickory CTO DW. Boy, let's see. I have one of those little Australian crappy ones you get from Academy that are red, which I actually used to light my charcoal on.
Oh, nice. It's a charcoal lighter.
So
Look-
I have I had a wide arsenal, you know.
You probably use them for different things. I'm
I
guessing
do.
steaks aren't going on the drum.
Oh yeah, and I have a Pits and Spits pellet grill too, which is
There you
that's
go.
pretty much my go-to daily. My PK is for my steaks and finishing hamburgers. The drum smoker is for pork steaks, hot and fast brisket, and then the CTO DW is for whole hogs.
All right. So the Pits and Spits pellet is your everyday, your daily.
It is my daily. It is my
Every
daily
day.
cooker.
Every day, guys. You want to get good at this, it's got to be every day. Practice makes perfect.
That
It makes
yeah,
consistent.
That's what they say.
Yeah. Well, let's get off the pits for a moment. Although I do have one more question about pits.
All right, let's
the
go.
PK you mentioned.
Yeah.
Aaron Franklin decided to make those crazy famous, and the price went way up when he decided to put in his book that it's his favorite grill to use. Did you know he did that?
I didn't know he said that, but I'm gonna throw it in the trash can.
Don't do that. Nothing wrong
We'll
with
come
Aaron.
out with the GP grill.
Okay.
You can buy a
There you
GP at
go.
half the price.
So
There you
can what is it about the PK? Is it the material it's made out of?
Well, it's
Why is it
cast
so
aluminum.
good? Is that why?
Cast aluminum is expensive. The nice part about the PK is one, it's incredibly efficient. It gets extremely hot,
Mm-hmm.
and it is perfect for things like steak,
Perfect.
searing things off.
Fajitas.
I can't get a better bark on a steak or a hamburger than on that grill. Some other grills that are similar that you can go try to find on the secondary market, like old school Hasty Bakes, and that's like an old 1950s. So I'm sure some people's parents out there remember what those are. But those actually are used on the competition steak circuit. Hasty Bakes, PKs. I think there's one called like char broiler or something like that. Anyway, you can go find some of those. You can even go find the original PK cast aluminum stuff on like eBay, but they're getting even really expensive now for those.
Well, so we did an event just recently where it was a steak event, and we did it at Creekstone Outdoors. If you are interested in a PK, Creekstone does sell PKs, as they also sell eggs and Yoders. Yoders have hit the market and become really popular.
Yep.
That wasn't on your short list, but has that been on your wish
I've
list?
never cooked on one of those.
Yeah.
I was looking at getting one, but I ended up going with the Pits and Spits, a
Don't
local
blame me.
Texas company.
Yeah.
A Longhorn graduate owns
There you
it. You know, so I guess that's out for you.
Pits and Spits is the first pit I knew. So no,
Really?
that
I
was,
mean, it's a great company. It's a great product. The thing I love about their barbecue pit, or especially I love about their pellet grill, is that they build the pellet grill exactly the same way that they build the regular offset.
nice.
Like,
So
and
it's
you know, like if you're using a Traeger or something like that, like let's get real, it's more flimsy. You know, it not as thick walls, that kind of stuff. But with the Pits and Spits, it is just as heavy duty a pit, even though it's a pellet grill.
Well, so let's change now off pits and talk about wood for a minute. Everybody likes to talk about how important it is to smoke. I know you can over smoke something.
Yeah.
You can overdo it.
Right.
Fresh wood, maybe a pine. What are you looking for when you find wood?
Pinion pine only.
Pine
We like using standing dead. So
What does that mean?
that's too particular for any of the home cooks. But when we're
We knew that would happen. If y'all hear a siren in the background, it's gonna go away. Sorry about that.
that is what we look for when we're contacting different wood suppliers is I want standing dead wood only, which is a tree that has died but has not fallen yet. So once a tree falls after it dies, then it starts taking on the moisture from the ground and getting rot.
Okay.
So a standing dead tree is essentially curing and hardening without taking on any funguses, any rot, any ground moisture, anything like that. So that is the most premium firewood that you can get is something, in my opinion, that is standing dead. Because a lot of guys around, they'll go cut a green tree and stack it
Yes.
and try to dry it out. That process isn't so great. You lose a lot of the natural oils in the wood, and therefore you start losing a lot of the flavor.
That makes sense. And do you cook with one type of wood only, or do you sometimes switch it up?
We start everything here on mesquite and finish it with post oak. We have big pits. We run really nice open airflow on ours. You don't ever have to worry about the mesquite making things too smoky.
Nice.
That's kind of if you're running your pit right, you'll never have to worry about that. But it does add that nice element of kind of nutty, rich flavor, especially to the beef. When I'm cooking at my house, if I'm cooking pork, I'm cooking with hickory. I love hickory. That's just me. But post oak, pecan, that kind of shoots a gap right through the middle of those two.
So no pine.
No pine at this time.
What at this time?
Yeah.
Why is that? Why are some woods not good?
Well, some of them are, poisonous. So,
Like pine.
Like pine. But the other thing is some are hard, some are soft. You want a good, nice hardwood. A lot of guys smoke with fruit wood too.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really noticed a difference, especially when you start getting up into pits that are this size. Like, I think you're kind of full of crap if you can say that, oh, that is a nice dry peach wood. Like,
Yeah.
that's bullshit.
Hints of cherry.
Right,
But you do see that out of state a lot.
for sure.
Yeah.
But it's more local wood there.
There.
So cherry, apple, that kind of stuff. But when you're going across the country, oak is kind of, whether it's
Consistent.
white oak or whatever.
Yeah.
Like everybody has an oak product that they can use.
Makes sense. Let's talk about the tools you use. I got a pigtail that I love to use almost every time I cook. I don't flip a brisket with a pigtail, but that's like one of my tools that when my friends come over, they see that they don't know that tool.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a tool in your backyard that you love to use every single time, or perhaps it catches people off guard? Hands.
My hands.
Just grab hot meat with your hands.
Yep. I definitely am. I have kitchen fingers, so
Uh-huh.
they don't feel heat.
Uh-huh.
But I have I'm very particular about how things are laid out and that kind of stuff. So I usually end up using my hands my special tool is a giant roll of paper towels.
That's a
But
good
if
one.
we're being completely honest, my wife can attest to that, and so can all my clothes that I cook in. Some of the tools that I really like are a Thermopen. So like an MK4 Thermopen is probably the best probe on the market, in my opinion. I know some people use Javelins. Is
You're-
another one.
You're talking about instant read thermometers right now, right?
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, Thermopin brand, very good instant read thermometer.
Yeah, 2 seconds, it's good. You can use it in water. Hell, it goes all the way high. So oil for frying, all that kind of stuff. Another thing, I think the most important tool in all of barbecue is having the right knives. Spend the money. When was the last time you threw a knife in the trash can? You don't do it. So whether the best knife you can buy is $200 and that, kind of middle of the road knife is $65, $70. The amount of times you're going to use it, the amount of frustration you're going to save yourself by going with the high-end steel it's a no-doubter,
Interesting.
and you'll have that knife for 5, 10, 15 years. It makes a great gift for, any barbecue enthusiasts, and it's something that's cherished. I have my knife roll right over here. It travels all around with me, and I collect nice knives and they all have a particular purpose. We have our trimming knife. I have, a rib membrane knife. I have a knife that I used to take the bones out of pork butts,
Right.
cut money muscles out. It's just important to have the right tool for the job, right?
Yeah, my favorite knife ends up typically being a fillet knife. I
Yep.
find it cuts raw meat real well.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
to
so
jump into.
my go-to trimming knife, which y'all will see, is a 7-inch or a 6-inch shun boning knife.
Okay.
So nice, some flex in the
Mhm.
in the blade, slight curvature, super sharp. That is my kind of best all-purpose knife, and then you start getting into little paring knives for some of the
Yeah.
more detailed work. But a good knife is so important. And it actually, a good sharp knife is the safest knife.
You mentioned the Thermopin instant read thermometers. Big mistake a lot of novices make. They get that instant read thermometer, they check the temp, they close the pit while it's still there, and it just melts, right? It just breaks because it's not built for that. There are thermometers though now that stay in the meat the whole time, right?
Right.
Like the meter that we mentioned a moment ago.
Yep.
Maybe you're not using those at home as you're using hands and feel. But
Yeah.
How has that been game changing for the backyard cook in your opinion?
I think so. I think one thing that's really important to remember when using those, because I'll admit when I first started out doing cooking, I would plug a meter in there or a probe and sit there and stare at the temperature and freak myself out, right? You can see everything that's moving.
Right.
You have this I feel like Yoda, but you have to build this confidence in your own ability and then confidence that the meat is doing what you want as long as the fire is where you want.
That makes sense.
So if you're going to plug one of those in there, don't live and die by the thing. Do what you need to do, keep that fire up, keep it going, keep it steady, and don't obsess about the number going up. Your meat is going to stall. It might go back sometimes. It's okay. But a lot of guys, they see that or it's not cooking as fast as they wanted it to, so they ratchet their temperature up, and then they end up messing it up.
What other technology in your pits are you using? Is there systems and computers and data being driven out of any of those pits?
I wish if I had developed that, I'd probably be a lot richer than I am.
We should do that.
Yeah.
Taylor, take a note, please. We're gonna develop that with Grant. Hey, so I'm getting a notice that we got a bunch of questions, and
Awesome.
after go into those questions, I'd love to go ahead and get that raw brisket out here, so we can start that process. Taylor, do we have a couple that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, some cohesity ones and smoking meat ones.
Where do you want to start?
Does the mill still have a hot box? Is it insulated?
No, I actually prefer to cook on completely uninsulated pits.
Now they make an insulated one.
They do
right?
have an insulated firebox on one, but to be completely honest, now maybe this person's not in Texas. It does not get cold enough here to warrant needing an insulated firebox. It actually, let me tell you why that produces not as good a barbecue. So the idea of when we're cooking barbecue is we're burning wood and we're creating a nice dry heat that flows across the brisket. Well, when you have an insulated firebox, you're burning wood, but they're turning into coals, and the insulated firebox is actually keeping those coals really hot. So you tend to not burn nearly as much wood. Well, and you end up just cooking really with radiant heat off of those coals, which one, doesn't give you a good bark formation.
Right.
Two, is a much more humid heat. Three, doesn't give you that barbecue flavor you want. So what it does is it turns your pit into a giant oven. The pits that we have in Houston have an insulated firebox. My first two trailers that I had were not insulated. And then when I opened this place, I went back to no insulation in any of my pits. You get a better bark. I think you get a better brisket. You get a better flavor. And, at the end of the day, if you save $50 a year for your backyard guy and wood costs,
yeah,
I mean, that's negligible, right? I bet most people would pay $50 to have better brisket.
Sure. And you pay extra for the insulated box.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You retain too much heat. That is a fact. And that's something that I've experienced. And I think that is something that pit makers want to sell you, to upsell you on their product. It is not actually something that you need for cooking.
There you go. That's a great answer. Taylor, more questions?
Yeah, we'll jump to Cohesity maybe. Maybe y'all can tag team this.
Oh.
Do they offer any products? Do y'all offer any products or solutions beyond that of data recovery? And then what does Center add to that?
Okay. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so at our core, we're a file system, right? Backup's a feature. Recovery's a feature. Test dev is a feature. Analytics is a feature. Ransomware, anomaly detection, they're all features. So core to what we do is a file system. Backup, our entry point, and not to sound like a history lesson, but our entry point, if you look at other products that our founder was involved in, Nutanix, how did Nutanix go to market? Nutanix started as a VDI solution, right? They wanted to be a production solution that would take over the data center, but the best way to get in the data center was to have a very tight and focused scope. And that's why most of you guys that know us originally know us as a backup solution and not for all the other features, functionality, and services that we provide customers.
On the other hand, what Center's bringing to the table is the processes and the people. It's an easy technology to use, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't mean that you're staffed to take that on. And so if you can picture like any other as a service model, we're trying to make sure that you have the people, the process, and the technology all wrapped in one. And as great as Cohesity is, there are some other tech tools that we have applied to our as a service model that help make a really well-rounded effort to it. But that's that. I want to get back to Grant. I don't want any more of that. No kidding. I do want more of that. Come on. Oh yeah, sous vide day.
Repeat the question, sorry.
Are you a big sous vide fan?
I'm not. I don't do that.
No.
No.
It seems to be a hot topic right now. You can get an internal temp exactly where you want it, and then finish it on a pit wherever you want it to be, as far as bark and crust.
I can do that without cheating.
Oh my gosh. Cheating.
All right. So, but what are we sous videing? Like sous videing is great for the backyard guy that needs like 12 steaks done for his guests that are coming over and doesn't want to overcook them.
That's a good example.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like if you stick a brisket in a sous vide bag, dude, come on.
All right. So Grant's anti-sous vide. What's the next one?
We'll do one more. Just restate the question, okay?
Yeah.
What does a full environment emergency restore look like this today?
Oh, so well, we go to Pinkerton's and buy more barbecue. Say it again. What is a full?
Environment emergency restore
A
look like?
full environment emergency restore look like? So a bit of a loaded question. That's going to look very different by company. Depending on where you're at and the maturity of your business, that could be a massive effort. However, if you have a clean copy of data that's readily available that you can touch immediately, proactive threat hunters that are containing and isolating the breach, and then visibility into security gaps through vulnerability scans, pen tests, and other tools, this should not happen at a wide scale. So what we practice and preach is a layered approach that limits the ability for that to occur. We are brought in a lot of times as 911, and those events can take 6 to 8 weeks to fully recover. Sometimes it's 3 to 4 days for just critical systems, and then everything else takes time. I'd love to explore that deeper, but due to time and having the raw brisket here, I'm gonna jump right back in. Are we good on questions? Thank you, Taylor. If we can get Rich to come up and bring that up here, I'm gonna ask that you and me get out of the way. Grant, will you slide down? Ooh. Thank you. And I'm gonna get on your right. Now, Grant, you're we'll put it all over here. Well, when you start this, thank you, Rich. When you start this, will you talk a bit about the anatomy of what we're dealing with here, the two
Sure.
muscles?
Okay, so
Wait 1 second. I'm just gonna for the camera, the other way. Excuse me. I'm just gonna do it right there. Thanks.
all right, so brisket. This one's probably about 19, close to 20 pounds. Would you grab me a roll of paper towels? It's my most important barbecue tool. Thank you. So we are gonna. This is your flat end. This is your point. This is that fatty muscle. This portion right here is where that those two muscles meet. So the idea here is we want to take this from this kind of big, unruly piece of meat down to something much more aerodynamic, streamlined, that cooks a lot more evenly. One of the things that we're going to try to do is anytime you have rough edges like this, or like this, or like this, those are going to dry out as that moist, that hot air, dry air goes right over them. So we're going to kind of taper everything in and make it so there's no sharp edges.
Now, this is if they went to the store. This is they're called a packer, right?
Yep. So
Packer brisket.
this is completely untrimmed. This is what you'd buy at the store if you went and just got your normal cryovac, IBP or Swift, HEB, Prime A1 or whatever they call it. This is what you would end up with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn it, and I like to start with this meat side up, fat side down. First thing we're going to want to do is every single brisket is going to have one of these pieces of heel fat on it. So we're going to take your knife. There's two ways you can do this. You can either go straight down like that, or some guys come in and cut it out. So but honestly, once you kind of make a few cuts on it, it kind of tends to just pull out
Go ahead right here.
that way. Well, we should just throw it on the ground.
On the ground.
Into a trash can or something, but
We'll work on that.
you can just put it right here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is actually, you'll notice too, when you get a brisket at the store, it's always going to have this kind of gray look to it. I don't know if you ever noticed that. What that actually is when they go to process these cows and they open them up, in order to kill off any parasites, bacteria, or anything, they actually flash steam them when they open the cavity up, and that actually is from that steam. So when you're uncryovacuuming something and you see that, it's nothing to worry about. It tastes just as fine, but I like to come in here and I'll cut this edge off, and the next thing we do is we'll take this edge of the point off. So right now we're working on the fatty side, and we want this to be totally flat. And my wife is laughing at me over here. And cook well. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. See how we're coming over here and making all these things aerodynamic. This is all too thin to cook with. So if we were making sausage, this is exactly what we would make the sausage out of.
Grant, while you're carving, talk about the local enthusiasts going to HEB versus maybe their butcher shop. Right?
Oh yeah.
The value between
one of the things about going to your local butcher shop is you might pay a little extra, but you're also paying for that knowledge. You're paying for somebody that can be a sounding board, give you ideas on what you want to do, and they're going to offer. If it's a good butcher shop, they're going to offer some higher end options, maybe a Wagyu. You'll notice though, if you're cooking a lot of Wagyu stuff, the trim specs for Wagyu stuff is a lot different. So it's going to look a little different when you take it out of that packaging. But any good prime is going to be good. A lot of local ranches, especially here in Texas, give you some good options. So now you're starting to see, you're getting that kind of nice, no rough edges, kind of almost looks like a bullet. And one little piece we'll take off here.
You kind of talked about this a second ago. You said, I like a bigger brisket, and then I cut it down into this shape that you're making right now. I know that's not on camera at the second, but in a second, I want to show the trimmings. Yeah. It is so much of that. I mean, you're nearly cutting it in half to start.
Yeah. So we cut it, pretty much we do cut it once in half, and then we pretty much cut it again in half when we cook it. So when people ask,
like, what's the net yield?
Why does your brisket cost so much? Well, we're only serving you the heart of the brisket, really the best stuff. Now, you'll see a lot of online videos where they come in here and they want you to remove this kind of stuff. That you don't need to do that. That unless you're doing some high-end competition cooking or something like that, that's really unnecessary. So
if you had to guess, by the time you have a raw brisket down to a ready to serve brisket, is that a third of the weight? Is that a half the weight of that raw?
We do I usually tend to say it loses about 60% of its weight in the trim and cook process. Yeah, at least.
Amazing. So you said the trimmings when raw will go into sausage and other areas.
Yeah, if you were to do that, I mean, some guys make their own sausage. It can. But you know.
And then
otherwise
the trimmings, when it's already cooked, what's left over goes into chopped beef or
maybe, I mean,
tacos.
yeah, you know, or employee meals or stuff like that. That's kind of why we trim the way we do, is so we have a lot less scraps in our final product. Almost every piece of this final product is going to be servable to the customer. Maybe the only portion I will tend sometimes not to serve, and this is just me because it's kind of me being obsessive, is just would be this little quadrant right here.
Why is
it's
that?
mostly lean underneath, and then it's just pretty much just a little fat cap. You know, it makes great chopped beef or for a sliced beef sandwich. It's not like the perfect slice portion, but really, if you at the end of the year, you know, if you're going down and you're talking about that kind of stuff, I mean, that just serving those 3 slices.
Turn that sideways real quick. So I think the camera above can probably see both of those right there. That's the difference of what we took out of it. Let me look, I screwed it over a little bit. Sorry about that. So that's the difference between what we took off versus what's left. So that's, to me, one of the most intimidating things getting started in briskets was I'm taking too much off. Maybe I removed too much.
Right.
And I get freaked out while I'm going along that path. But it looks like you can't take off too much.
No, you cannot take off too much. I mean, even, you know, if I was doing backyard, I'd probably come in here and just go ahead and
Oh, yeah. Take that off. That's,
cut that.
yeah. I don't know who'd want that.
It's probably going to be James's brisket.
A little more. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Better take some more off, sure. Prove that point.
There you go.
All right, so we're going to transition out with a complete brisket, and I'd like to, if you could, talk about is there two? Do you put a binding agent? Some people like to mustard the barbecue first.
No. I like it just the way it is. There's plenty of moisture on there. You don't need any sort of binding agent. Just use the natural juices from there.
Yeah.
I actually find that using something like a mustard gives you a much softer bark.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And so now when it's done, it starts to look like this, thanks to all that dry heat
It's
and
movie magic.
all that aerodynamic smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a wrong way to cut this?
Yeah, so a lot of people will come in and they're going to cut it all the way back. We don't want to do that. So remember, we had it laid out. Remember that part I rounded off? That's your flat, that's your lean. Okay. This is your fatty side. First thing we're going to do is I come in and I'm going to split the two. Okay. So I'm going to separate my flat from my fatty. And for the fatty end, we're going to rotate it. And this is that part I was talking about, that chopped beef side. See how all it is that little fat cap in the top?
Yes.
I mean, it's fine to serve, but if you were going to compete or something like that, you're not going to want to do that.
I feel like that's the only part that Mike in Houston gives me.
Probably. He doesn't like you, that's why.
When you go to competition, are you doing the point and the flat, or is it just flat?
Just flat. They want only lean slices. There you go. There's some burn ends.
No, that's interesting. You just said the burn-in comment. So the picture that you see on Instagram always is that bigger half left over. They have to hold that up, and some people squeeze the heck out of it to show how much juice is coming out of it. Yeah, you don't have to squeeze any there, do you?
No.
Stop
brisket abuse.
This little quarter, this is actually one of my favorite things about your restaurant. Those usually get set aside, and off the right order, they get quartered up.
Right.
Right? Is that something that was a technique at home? Why did y'all start doing that?
Well, you know, some people don't want that piece, and so we want to save it for the customers
Who
that
are
know,
those people?
and they do. It's really we mostly
God.
started doing it for James.
Yeah.
Yep. So with the flat, the lean end, remember, it was all going this way. You just come in here with your lean brisket, and you just slice it straight up. How do we get the crust? The crust is this, plus that nice dry air coming from that non-insulated firebox, the combustion of wood. You know, one thing I try to tell people, I don't know if anybody here has ever been, you know, like real rural tent camping. You know, like in a, you know, kind of like an outfitter's tent that has like a wood stove in it.
Yeah.
If you have, you'll notice that when you're running a wood stove inside a tent and it's cold, you don't have condensation in your tent. But if you've ever taken a propane heater and put that in your tent and you wake up and it's like pretty much raining on you,
Sure.
that's because propane is such a wet heat. But when you have that wood burning, it actually is a drying agent, and that's how you start getting better and better and better bark.
So it's the consistent temperature, the sponge effect that makes tender meat. It's the airflow that makes good bark.
Yep, I think so.
Awesome. So we get to eat that later? I kind of lost my train of thought.
You could eat it now if you wanted.
Okay. We have to start that sooner than later. Maybe, do you think, Taylor, they want to watch us eat this? No, probably not.
Maybe
So-
a contest.
A contest who can eat it fastest? So that's probably a good question. Here at the restaurant and then other barbecue joints that maybe the group doesn't know of yet, what is your favorite thing to do? What do you order here and what do you order on the road?
All right, my go-to order is 1 slice of fatty brisket, 2 pork ribs, and I'm a potato salad guy. If you're not eating potato salad, you're not eating barbecue.
I agree with
And
that.
are you a finger food? Is barbecue a finger food or is this a fork and knife culinary experience?
No, I need to ask my wife. Do I eat this with my fingers or do I eat it with a fork and knife? I eat the potato salad with a fork and knife. I'm not a heathen.
That's good. Yeah.
But I will eat the meat with with my hands.
Yeah.
Remember, this is my best barbecue tool.
No, I understand. I can relate to that very well. I'm not sure that Chris Pace, who was up here earlier, appreciates my hands in the food side of me, though. So, awesome. Questions, Taylor? Do we have anyone else that are throwing anything out?
They're loving it. They're so hungry.
So, do we have? Do you have a favorite barbecue restaurant outside of your own?
I mean, I like a lot of. I think the cool part about barbecue now is there's lots of different items at different places that I really like.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just have to go to one spot. You can go to numerous. Like another one here in San Antonio that I love is 2M Smokehouse. You know, they have some great stuff there, and I really enjoy going over there and eating barbecue. You know, now we've reached a point where there's a lot of great barbecue across the state. But you know, for me, when I go back and then I end up eating my own stuff, I'm like, damn, this is good. So
Yeah.
you know, usually I end up at my spot.
That's hilarious. So I probably would say if I was producing this too, I would go other places, say, what am I paying for this, and go back to my own too.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. So Grant, thank you very much. We're
My
going to do
pleasure.
a quick giveaway.
Cool.
It's nothing major, just an extra large big green egg,
Oh,
which is my preferred.
That's actually pretty
tool.
major.
That's my preferred tool in my backyard. I now am the owner of 2 green eggs. One, a large that my dad got for my son on the occasion of his first birthday, which every 1-year-old needs.
Yeah.
And the other, an XL that he thought I needed to feed the whole family appropriately. So I'm excited about both of those.
Cool.
So I'm going to step behind you real quick. And we have Taylor confirmed. Everyone's name's in now? Nice. Well, guys. Okay, zoom in.
Huh?
Brian Klassnen. If you're still on, buddy, you just won a big green egg, my man. Hit up Taylor. We'll make arrangements to make sure you get your hands on it. Brian, congratulations. So don't forget, if you want to sign up for a meeting and you're one of our first 5, we got a Meter Plus ready for you. Second, and follow up to this, I know a lot of y'all had a bunch of Cohesity questions. I don't blame you. It's a really cool technology. We have a webinar being planned within 2 weeks from today, where we're going to take a much deeper dive into the evolution of backups and how the Cohesity product has addressed the current cybersecurity state we're in. With all that, guys, keep the questions coming. Looking forward to joining y'all next time. Thanks.